Thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here. My name is David Matarrita. I'm a professor at the Recreation, Park, and Tourism Sciences Department at Texas A&M. And the title of my presentation is Araucanía, Chile, Enhancing Quality of Life to Improve University Capability. So when Mason asked me to put together what I was going to be doing here, that's kind of what guided my thoughts in my presentation. Really briefly about me, I was born and raised in Costa Rica, where I got my undergrad in agricultural economics. In 2003, I moved to the United States to do my master's in rural sociology at Penn State, and after that I continued into a PhD program. And once I was done, the same week I graduated, I also married and stayed in the United States, and had a job by then already at Texas A&M. Started that month of August. Was pretty crazy, moving all the way from Pennsylvania to Texas after a wedding and a graduation. So I survived that. I think I'll be all right. I was an assistant professor until 2014, and then thankfully I got tenure, and now I'm an associate professor at A&M. You'll see that a lot of what I do is, everything I do is connected to rural areas, and the reason why I'm so attracted to rural areas is first, the family. Both my parents were raised in very impoverished rural areas. I'm first generation actually college student. And then as I grew older and I was putting myself through college, I work in tourism, and most of the tourism in Costa Rica is in rural areas, so I was always very interested in the effects of tourism in rurality, and so that's how I ended up studying rural sociology at Penn State. All right, at a glance, the funds provided by Fulbright would allow me to implement research and teaching activities in the Araucanía region in the Chilean Patagonia. I'll talk a little bit more about this region, but it's the poorest region of the country. I'm working in conjunction with professors from the University of Frontera, and they have an associated research center on studies of Patagonia in Pucón, which is about an hour and a half southeast of Temuco, where the University of Frontera is located. Very briefly, the UFRO is a state and regional university, largest and most respected teaching institution in the region, serving 8,500 students, 800 graduate students, and around 400,000 people in the web presence. The CIEP is an international multidisciplinary research center formed by many different scholars from different departments at UFRO, but also other universities in Chile and outside Chile. I didn't mention here, but we're working very close with Universidad del Comahue in Neuquén, in Argentina, and my colleague from there actually tries to get here every time I've been here to collaborate, and actually in this project she actually has a role in it. So overall, the proposed activities is to improve research and teaching capabilities of UFRO and CIEP. That's kind of my mission here, both research, to try to enhance their research and their teaching. At the same time, I am also enhancing my own research and teaching while working with them. I also seek to improve, to produce applied knowledge related to migration and sustainable rural development. And altogether, this activity seeks to improve the region's quality of life. So the way I see it is through using UFRO and CIEP as a mechanism to improve quality of life. If I can help these universities somehow to improve a little bit what they do, I see that trickling down into society and hopefully improving what they do. So in the research part of this, I am interested in the lifestyle migration to rural Chile. So I'm interested in understanding the barriers to interaction and collaboration between lifestyle migrants, which I'm going to define in a couple of minutes, and the local rural residents. All right, so migration is a topic that has been of interest to sociologists for many years, for the history of mankind, because migration has very deep implications in the receiving communities. There's many reasons for migration, but the migration that has typically been studied is the migration forced by economic reasons, which typically talks about rural residents moving to the city in the search of better ways of life. Unfortunately, the story is never that good, but they move to the city in the search of better employment, more remunerated employment, making a better living. In the 1970s, starting in the United States, a different phenomenon was observed. Suddenly, there were more people moving to rural areas than the flow of people moving to urban areas. It was a reverse migration pattern. And that pattern was observed later on in many other countries, and until today it has been consistently seen more and more. The phenomenon has different names. It has been studied by different disciplines. Some of it has been amenity migration, rural renaissance, exurbanization. One of them is lifestyle migration. That's the one I choose. And overall, this has become a phenomenon that is not just randomly happening here and there. It's happening everywhere and happening in large numbers in many parts of the world. So these rural communities are becoming receiving communities to people from the city and other places that, as you can imagine, are very different from the typical, rural resident. And so what is lifestyle migration? And so distinct from economic necessity or forced relocation, lifestyle migration is a population movement driven by choices that people want to make, motivated by a desire and ability to relocate, searching for specific lifestyle conditions. So they migrate with the objective of merging their motivations, which could be escaping from the city, looking for an easier, slower pace of life, being pain-led, being in better climate, desiring to live close to nature, and merging that with the characteristics and conditions offered by the new location of residence, being in a rural place, being close to natural, being close to a volcano, to a lake, to a forest, etc. So basically, my lifestyle migration is a migration driven by my choice, not because someone is forcing me or because necessity, but I want to live next to a forest or a volcano rather than having concrete all around me, for instance. Okay, and this phenomenon has become possible worldwide because of two different forces, let's say, or two different sides. From the demand side, there's been change in workforce conditions and values. We now have more understanding that we don't have to be chained to our table, 80 hours, 100 hours a week. We understand that there's a value in working under different terms. There's been improvement in telecommunication and transportation that allow us to work remotely. There's been a transgenerational transfer of wealth where newer and newer generations are reaping the benefits of their parents or grandparents that allow them to buy second homes or property in rural areas. And also the adoption of lifestyle choices, including leisure, tourism, quality of life standards. We're a different generation that we have an important or a new understanding of how we need to be living, and that has sort of provided one side of the equation. On the other side, there is a loss of dependency of the rural economy on traditional extractive activities. Less and less people, like if we look at the United States in the early 1900s, 80-something% of the population lived off agriculture. Now it's about 2%. It's done differently, but less and less people are living off the extractive industry. So that allows, what I call the post-productivist uses of the rural landscape, meaning there's land available for us to buy a second home or to have a cottage or to have some sort of place where we can actually go either temporarily, seasonally, or permanently to these communities. So when you put this together, we come in with this lifestyle migration. Now, it's important to understand that the lifestyle migrants are not a homogeneous group. They can be different in terms of origin. Some of them can be like the ones I'm studying now come from within Chile, from Santiago to these rural areas. But traditionally, I have actually studied a transnational migrant, those Americans, Europeans moving to Costa Rica, or from Britain to France, or so transnational ones. They also are different in terms of length of stay. Some of them are seasonal. They want to be there when the weather is nice, when they can go out and play and do all sorts of fun stuff. But some of them are permanent. They move completely to the new rural location for a whole new start, And some of them are also different in terms of the type of stay. stage. Some of them created their wealth already, and they go to these communities and they don't really work. They just stay there and spend the money. Some of them actually want or need to work to support their new lifestyle, and so they establish new businesses, or they work in little tourism shops or something around in the community. Now, I think more important than everything is to understand that this migration is not just a movement of people, but it really has very big consequences in this rural community. Starting from the fact that these urbanites are very different from these rural residents, especially when you look at transnational migration. You have a large number of implications in this community, and this is just a very quick summary of some of them that has been found in the literature. There's shift of predominant productive activities where people need to learn how to, instead of milking cows, now they need to know how to do beds or linens, or cook or have a restaurant or things of that nature. Increased property values, taxes, and overall cost of living. Cost of things skyrocket because of these migrants. Higher demand for infrastructure, commercial activities, and public services. Gentrification, shifting levels of social capital, social interaction, even community identity. Shifting land ownership, conversion abuses, increased pollution, environmental degradation, and so on and so on. There's all sorts of different impacts that the literature has been able to find when you have this phenomenon of these migrants moving to these rural communities. Now, what is the gap in the literature? I think from my standpoint, there's two big gaps. First of all, most of this literature has been built from studies conducted in the global north, and there's much more or less of the information that we have in terms of what's happening in the global south, how these communities are being affected. And from the other side, the other gap is that there's very few studies that really have looked at the role of community in terms of how community comes together to mitigate some of the undesired, unexpected consequences of this type of migration. Okay, so I frame my study what community field theory, and basically what I'm trying to understand is what are the barriers. How can we get the residents that live there all their life and the local the migrants to collaborate and work together in terms of designing strategies to help them mitigate the impacts of this type of migration. Now, this is how I justify my premise, is that a lot of these small rural communities are very vulnerable. They don't have the institutional presence or the funding to really create a type of development that comes from top down. There's a lot of what they need to do that comes from the bottom, from their own residents. But as you can imagine, when one type of resident is very different from the other type of resident, there's all sorts of culture clashes, there's all sorts of resentment, there's also competitions, conflict over resources, et cetera, that makes that local development, local community development almost impossible because they really don't like each other. So in the context of sociocultural and demographic differences, local community development initiatives can be highly difficult. Okay, so I think, and this is what I'm trying to do here, is that it's important to understand what barriers and difficulties, and of course what commonalities and opportunities exist between these migrants and these local residents. So the question becomes, what community factors promote or deter interaction between local residents and migrants? That's basically the question that I'm asking. When I built this presentation, I didn't realize I only have 20 minutes, so I'm not going to go into the framework of analysis. But I do want to talk a little bit about the study side. So the Araucanía region is home to about almost 1 million people in Chile. A third of them living in rural areas, and almost a quarter are aboriginals. Their median income per capita is 8 times smaller than the wealthiest region in Chile, and 23% of the population, almost a quarter, lives in poverty. Okay, so given this context, I believe that academia has a very important role in helping establish or create knowledge that can help its population to change some of the problems that they're facing. So that's where I'm trying to come here and help. The proposed study was conceived through recurring conversations in 2014 with my UFRO CF partners and also the Comahue, University of Comahue in Argentina partners. I came last year in June to start talking to my colleagues in UFRO and started visiting some of these communities. And then they flew me in January to give some talks, and we also keep visiting some other communities to try to establish which ones we work with. So we visited several ones, and we selected Madalcahuello, which is a town about an hour and a half, 2 hours northeast of Temuco. And this community is just starting to feel the effects of amenity migration. So we felt that was really great because, first of all, most of the studies in this field have been done when the problems are already so advanced. It's just kind of you're looking at them and pointing them out, but you can't really do that much. Versus, okay, if it's starting and maybe we can create some sort of knowledge that can help them understand how these barriers can be removed, there might be still time to help them create some sort of strategies that could potentially help them mitigate some of the unwanted effects. So we already collected socio-demographic data. My UFRO partners and some of the grad students that are very gung-ho went and collected socio-demographic data even before I got here. I got here 2 weeks ago. At the end of this month and beginning of next month, I'm actually going to do 4 focus groups, 2 with migrants and 2 with local rural residents, in which I'm going to discuss these topics about barriers to interaction and collaboration. And from there, initially I'm talking about a survey instrument that then I'm going to administer at the end of the year. But more and more I'm starting to incline that because of the type of questions that we're asking and the complexity of some of these things, this might turn into actually introduce instead of I love quantitative stuff, but I think this kind of problem requires more qualitative sort of a question. So I'm starting to think this is going to be. I'm already working with some of the colleagues I met the last week, and I'm very excited about learning a lot of new frameworks that they use. And so we're doing some tweaking. The overall question remains the same, but I'm very excited to learn from them, and so we're doing some changes to the methods. We hope to create, we initially talked about 2 research articles. We're now really talking about 3 research articles with the questions that we have drafted. We also intend to share the findings with the community, and we also intend to disseminate the findings in conferences both in the US and here in South America. Okay, so that was the research part of it. The teaching part, which is the second part of what I'm trying to do, is to do the following activities. There's going to be an open seminar where students and faculty or UFRO are invited, in which I'm going to talk about the same things I just told you, the study that I'm going to be doing. That's actually going to be next Wednesday. That's already been scheduled. I'm also going to do a seminar on research methods related to a drop-off pickup method of survey that has proven to be highly effective in terms of increased response rate, as opposed to the traditional mail survey that has really gone down. People don't want to respond surveys anymore. So I got this information. This is a method that has been around for maybe 30, 40 years, but my colleagues at Houston State have been perfectioning it, so they actually share publications with me that haven't even been published yet, so that I could be up to date with the newest information on this methodology, and I'm going to use all that information to present it. So UFRO is getting like the newest thing. It's not even out there. It's being revised by journalists. And students and faculty in UFRO are going to attend that. I'm also leading workshops related to scientific productions where graduate students at the social scientist group in UFRO are attending. We meet about twice a week. We met yesterday. I almost lost my flight here because of that. I got to the airport 25 minutes before the flight. I'm glad people were running late. So anyway, the idea of this is to give them guidance in how to publish, and actually they are bringing very early drafts of publication they're working on, and I'm going to guide them all the way to try to get them as close as possible to a publication before I leave. So we're meeting and teaching them practical knowledge on how to improve their productivity. I'm also offering one-on-one sessions related to research, where graduate students or researchers or UFRO and CF are invited, and this on demand. I'll make myself available whenever they want to meet. And finally, there's going to be a closing seminar related to the preliminary findings of the study in Malarca wager. So in conclusion, the proposed activities in the Araucanía region intends to provide the following benefits. Diversification of the teaching abilities of UFRO educators and graduate students by gaining new knowledge on research methodologies and on publishing on international high-impact journals. Diversification of theories and literatures on social sciences topics, increased understanding on how to publish in international high-impact journals, and increased reach visibility and reputation by publishing in well-read and important journals worldwide. Also increased exposure to produced knowledge. UFRO and CM can better serve this region of the world. One of my assumptions is that if they can produce more and more important valuable knowledge, they can help the region. And finally, to better understand the social phenomenon of lifestyle migration that can help reduce the barriers between local community development initiatives. I didn't put it here, but obviously I'm actually learning a lot from them. I'm already been here just 2 weeks. I'm already very excited reading a couple new books they gave me, and so there's also all the benefits that I'm gaining out of this. And that's saying that, I want to conclude by thanking Fulbright for trusting me to be an ambassador of the United States and hopefully help the folks of the Araucanía region, and of course help myself and my agenda in the process. Thank you very much.